Hi, my name is Stephen Hovatter, and I want to demo how you can use sermon design to structure your sermons. And to do that, I've identified a text in Luke chapter 8, verses 40 through 56, which is the two stories together. The story of Jairus' daughter who is raised to life, and of course the story of the woman who is healed while Jesus is on the way to meet Jairus. And I've kind of identified in these stories kind of what I want to use for this demo would be something like, a focus around how suffering creates real desperation and isolation from people. And then also, I want the sermon to do. I want it to have the function of moving the church to have solidarity with those who are suffering. Okay, so that's kind of what I want to accomplish with this sermon. And so, when we come to the sermon phase, we've already listened to the text, we've already identified these purposes for it, we've identified some other important things that we want to take note of in the sermon. When we come to the structure phase, of what we have in the app are a couple of windows here. This is this main window here on the right-hand side is your canvas, okay? And then we have a palette of different movements over here on the left-hand side. And the way that you work to build sermons is you simply drag movements over into your canvas to construct the sermon however you will. Of course, you can delete those or change their order. So let's just say for this sermon, we might want to think of it starting with the story itself, okay? And so we may have some sort of telling of that narrative. And we want to make that a narrative, make sure that it's kind of pointed towards this place of tension where we're kind of able to say, so these people they find their healing, but everybody doesn't. And what about those people who don't experience healing, like the people in this particular story? And then we may move from that point of tension to having a moment of lament where we are thinking about, we're just expressing the reality of suffering in the world. But we may want to come from that and maybe have some way of sharing some wisdom that we've kind of gathered from maybe somebody within the congregation or our own experience. Or maybe that's a place of testimony. And maybe these things are in a little bit different order, okay? So maybe we would want to have some shared wisdom, but then come back and really focus on the reality of suffering after that. And then maybe end with a word of testimony or maybe something different. So this is how we can use this palette of movements, and you'll see each time we highlight one, we get kind of a description about what that movement is, and we can kind of work through that, and we can name these things, as we go. All right, and so this is the basic way that you construct a sermon out of these different movements. But if we don't want to maybe do this kind of all on our own, maybe it may be that once we've come up with what we want to do with the sermon, that we might want to look at some pre-made templates for forms, and there are several of these included in the app. So maybe you want to think about this as something like using a structure that has some sort of vignettes and a refrain. Like, so maybe we have the vignette of Jairus. Okay, we have the vignette of the woman who interrupts the story, right? All right, and maybe we're going to come up with some other kind of vignette that's a story within the congregation. Okay, some kind of testimonial story or something like that. All right. Something in maybe the preacher's life or something within the church. Maybe we want to build in a refrain like this. And one that I've been thinking about is something like, have you ever felt completely alone in a crowd? Okay, And so maybe that's our refrain. And we want to use that as a way of capturing the sense of desperation with the story. And maybe what we do is we tell the story of Jairus, and we end with the refrain. We tell the story of the woman in the interruption, and we end with the refrain again. And we tell someone's story, and we have something in the refrain again. Maybe that sets us up to say to the church, if you felt like that, then it should change the way you act as part of the crowd. Okay, so we might use this kind of structure as a way of doing it. And or if we're not really completely satisfied with that, what we might choose to do instead is we might use something like a narrative and backstory. Okay, where we leap into this story. We kind of jump into the maybe the part where after Jesus has healed the woman, and the person from Jairus' house comes in and says, don't bother the teacher anymore, okay, because your daughter's died. And maybe that's the exact point of tension. It seems like there's a lot of tension in that moment potentially. And maybe then we back up and we think about Jairus's daughter, okay, and maybe kind of what the whole journey in this sickness had been. And then we kind of use that to describe what the stakes are in this moment when Jesus has delayed. All right, and then we come back into the story, and maybe tell how Jesus resolves that and gives hope back to the family, and maybe unpack that for the congregation a bit. So here's the deal: I don't really want to get stuck in the particulars for this sermon, because it may be that there are lots of different forms that we could use to describe what's happening in this particular sermon. But really what I want to say, I just want to demonstrate that you can kind of mess around with these things, right? And whether you want to use a form that you're kind of creating on the fly, okay, or whether you want to use a pre-made type of sermon structure, then what the app is built to do is give you this visual way of constructing those things together and being able to rearrange them and really see visually what you're doing in the sermon, and how the structure affects whether or not you're able to accomplish your purpose or not. And that's the basic. That's really the heart of the app, and I hope it's useful to you in your ministry, and hope it helps you write great sermons that not are just flashes of brilliance, but really I hope it helps you create sermons that are fruitful and help you accomplish what God has given you to do in those preaching moments. All right, God bless.